Chapter 1. The Invitation to Thornfield Manor. The late afternoon sun cast a golden sheen over the orderly chaos of London's streets. But within the confines of Hercule Poirot's impeccably arranged flat, all was serene. The little Belgian detective sat in his favorite armchair, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his mustache waxed to perfection. Before him, on a polished mahogany table, lay an envelope of cream-colored vellum, its edges embossed with gold. The invitation within had piqued Poirot's curiosity, a rare feat in a man who prided himself on his discerning taste. Mon ami Hastings, Poirot said, his eyes twinkling as he waved the invitation. What do you make of this summons to Thornfield Manor? An affair of grandeur, n'est-ce pas? Captain Arthur Hastings, sprawled comfortably on the sofa, glanced up from his newspaper. Thornfield Manor. Sounds like a jolly weekend in the country. Who's the host? Sir Reginald Hawthorne, Poirot replied, his voice precise. A man of industry, wealth, and, one suspects, secrets. The invitation promises a gathering of Les Gens distingués aristocrats, artists, and a certain Count Victor Rostov, a diplomat of some mystery. Tiens, Hastings, such a mix is rarely without intrigue. Hastings grinned. You smell a mystery already, don't you? Can't we just enjoy a weekend of fine wine and good company? Poirot's lips twitched. The good company, mon cher, is often the source of the mystery. Along why, we depart tomorrow. The journey to Thornfield Manor, nestled in the rolling hills of Kent, was a study in contrasts. The train's rhythmic clatter gave way to a chauffeur-driven Rolls-Royce, which carried Poirot and Hastings through lanes hedged with blooming hawthorn. As the manor came into view, Hastings let out a low whistle. The estate was a vision of opulence, a sprawling Georgian mansion with ivy-clad walls, its windows glinting like jewels in the evening light. Beyond the house stretched the famed Gilded Garden, a masterpiece of horticulture, where roses, marigolds, and chrysanthemums shimmered with golden petals. Meticulously curated to dazzle the eye, Magnifique Poirot murmured, his gaze sweeping over the garden. But beauty, Hastings, it conceals as much as it reveals. They were greeted at the entrance by Sir Reginald Hawthorne himself, a robust man in his 50s, with a florid complexion and a hearty laugh that seemed forced. His eyes, however, betrayed a flicker of unease. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, welcome, he boomed, ushering them into a grand hall, adorned with chandeliers and ancestral portraits. My wife, Lady Beatrice, is eager to meet you. She's the soul of these gatherings, you know. Lady Beatrice Hawthorne emerged from a side door, a vision in emerald silk, her auburn hair swept into an elegant chignon. Her smile was radiant, yet Poirot noted a certain brittleness in her manner, as if she were playing a role. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice melodious, your reputation precedes you. I trust you'll find our little party diverting. Madame, Poirot replied, bowing. I am certain it will be most illuminating. The other guests soon assembled in the drawing room, a chamber of velvet drapes and gilded mirrors. Clara Vane, a sultry actress with kohl-lined eyes, lounged on a chaise, her laughter sharp as crystal. Dr. Mortimer Crane, a lean physician with a guarded expression, stood by the fireplace, his fingers tapping restlessly. Count Victor Rostov, impeccably dressed, exuded an air of aloof charm, his accent hinting at Eastern European origins. Emily Langston, a young heiress with a quick wit and a penchant for observation, surveyed the room with keen interest. Each guest, Poirot noted, seemed to carry an invisible weight, their smiles masking undercurrents of tension. Dinner was a lavish affair, served in a dining room aglow with candlelight. Sir Reginald presided with forced joviality, regaling the company with tales of his industrial triumphs. Lady Beatrice, at the opposite end, steered the conversation with practiced ease, though Poirot observed her glance repeatedly toward Count Rostov, who responded with enigmatic smiles. Clara Vane's flirtatious banter with Dr. Crane drew raised eyebrows, while Emily Langston's pointed questions about the estate's history elicited evasive replies from their host. As dessert was served a delicate lemon souffle, the conversation turned to the Gilded Garden. "It's Beatrice's pride and joy," Sir Reginald said, his voice softening. "She designed it herself, every bloom chosen for its golden hue. They say it holds secrets, though I'm not one for such fancies." "Secrets?" Poirot asked, his tone mild but his eyes sharp. "Oh, just old tales," Lady Beatrice interjected, her laugh a touch too bright. "The gardeners claim the roses whispered truths to those who listen." Hastings chuckled. "Sounds like a load of romantic nonsense." "Perhaps," Poirot said, "but the truth, mon ami, often hides in plain sight." The evening progressed with music and cards, the guests dispersing into smaller groups. Poirot, ever observant, noted Clara Vane's whispered exchange with Dr. Crane, Count Rostov's solitary stroll toward the garden, and Emily Langston's curious glances at a locked cabinet in the hall. The air was thick with unspoken motives, and Poirot's little gray cells hummed with anticipation. As midnight approached, the manor's tranquility was shattered by a piercing scream from the direction of the Gilded Garden. The guests froze, glasses clinking as they were set down. Sir Reginald leapt to his feet, his face ashen. "Beatrice," he cried, rushing toward the French doors that led to the garden. Poirot and Hastings followed, the other guests trailing behind. The garden, bathed in moonlight, was a sea of golden blooms, their beauty now eerie in the night's chill. At its heart, near a marble fountain, lay a crumpled figure. Lady Beatrice Hawthorne, her emerald gown stained with crimson, stared sightlessly at the stars, a jeweled dagger glinting beside her. Poirot knelt, his expression grave. "Mon Dieu," he murmured. "The Gilded Garden has claimed its first secret." Chapter 2. The golden corpse. The moon hung low over Thornfield Manor, its silver light bathing the Gilded Garden in an ethereal glow. The golden roses, meticulously cultivated to shimmer with an almost unnatural brilliance, seemed to mock the grim scene at their heart. Lady Beatrice Hawthorne lay motionless, her emerald gown pooling like dark ink against the golden blooms. A jeweled dagger, its hilt encrusted with emeralds, glinted beside her, its blade stained with blood. The guests of Thornfield Manor stood in a hushed semicircle, their faces pale, their breaths visible in the chill night air. Hercule Poirot knelt beside the body, his small frame radiating calm authority, while Captain Hastings hovered nearby, his usual cheer replaced by a grim frown. "Mon Dieu, Hastings," Poirot murmured, his voice steady despite the horror before him. "A tragedy most foul. Observe, mon ami, the serenity of her face. It is not the visage of one who struggled." Hastings peered over Poirot's shoulder, his brow furrowed. "She looks almost peaceful, doesn't she? But that dagger, ghastly thing, who could do such a thing?" Poirot's eyes narrowed as he examined the dagger, careful not to touch it. The weapon was ornate, more ceremonial than practical, its gold hilt gleaming with emeralds that caught the moonlight. Lady Beatrice's auburn hair fanned across the ground, framing her face in a halo of crimson. Her eyes, wide open, stared blankly at the stars, and her expression held an unsettling calm, as if death had come as a gentle surprise. In her right hand, clutched tightly, was a scrap of paper, its edges crumpled. With gloved fingers, Poirot gently pried the paper free and unfolded it. Scrawled in a hurried, almost frantic hand were the words, "The garden hides the truth." He held it up for Hastings to see, his mustache twitching slightly. "Tiens, Hastings, a clue from the victim herself. But what truth does this garden conceal?" Hastings shook his head, his voice low. "It's cryptic, Poirot. Could it be a warning or a confession?" "Perhaps both," Poirot replied, slipping the note into his pocket for safekeeping. His gaze swept the scene, taking in every detail. The undisturbed soil around the body, the precise angle of the dagger, the faint scent of roses mingling with the metallic temps of blood. The method of death is clear, but the motive, that is the puzzle we must solve. A cry broke the silence as Sir Reginald Hawthorne stumbled forward, his florid face contorted with grief. "Beatrice," he wailed, falling to his knees beside his wife's body. "My darling Beatrice, who has done this?" His hands clawed at the grass, tearing golden petals in his anguish, until Dr. Mortimer Crane intervened, his lean frame moving with practiced efficiency. "Sir Reginald, you mustn't touch her," Dr. Crane said, his tone firm yet sympathetic. "We must preserve the scene for the police." His hands, steady as a surgeon's, guided Sir Reginald back, though Poirot noted a faint sheen of perspiration on the doctor's brow. "Unusual for the cool night. Monsieur le Docteur Poirot," said his green eyes piercing, "have you examined the body?" "Not yet," Crane replied, meeting Poirot's gaze with a hint of defiance. "It's clear she was stabbed, likely through the heart. Death would have been instantaneous, I imagine." Poirot nodded, his mind already cataloguing the doctor's demeanor calm, yet with a nervous edge. He turned his attention to the other guests, who stood at a distance, their reactions painting a vivid picture of their characters. Clara Vane, the actress, clutched a silk shawl around her shoulders, her kohl-lined eyes darting from the body to the faces around her. Her lips trembled, but Poirot sensed a theatrical quality to her distress, as if she were playing a role even. Now Count Victor Rostov stood apart, his tall figure silhouetted against the garden's golden glow. His expression was unreadable, but his fingers toyed with a gold cigarette case, a subtle tell of unease. Emily Langston, the heiress, gripped the arm of a marble bench, her sharp eyes scanning the group as if committing every detail to memory. "Someone must call the police," Emily said, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "This is no accident." "Indeed," Mademoiselle Poirot agreed, rising to his feet. "But first, we must observe. The police will come, but they will not see what Hercule Poirot sees." His tone was gentle, yet it carried an unshakable confidence that drew the guests' attention. Sir Reginald, now supported by Dr. Crane, looked at Poirot with desperate hope. "You'll find who did this, won't you, Monsieur Poirot? You must." Poirot inclined his head. "I shall employ the little grey cells, Sir Reginald, to uncover the truth. But we must act swiftly, for time is the ally of the guilty." The garden seemed to close in around them, its golden beauty now a stark contrast to the violence it had witnessed. Poirot's gaze lingered on the cryptic note in his pocket, its words echoing in his mind. The garden hides the truth. He sensed that the answer lay not only in the physical evidence, but in the hidden motives of those who stood before him, their secrets buried as deeply as the roots of the gilded roses. "Mon ami," Poirot said to Hastings, his voice barely above a whisper, "this is no ordinary murder. There is a purpose here, a design, and we shall unravel it." Hastings nodded, his jaw tight. "I don't like the look of this, Poirot. Too many people with too many secrets." Poirot replied, his eyes gleaming, "and it is our task to bring those secrets into the light." Chapter 3. The Guest List and Hidden Motives. The grand dining room of Thornfield Manor, with its crystal chandeliers and mahogany table, set with silver and fine china, should have been a haven of elegance. Yet, as the guests gathered for dinner, mere hours after the discovery of Lady Beatrice Hawthorne's body, an oppressive silence hung over the room, broken only by the clink of cutlery and the occasional nervous cough. Hercule Poirot, seated near the head of the table, observed the assembled company with the precision of a watchmaker, his green eyes noting every gesture, every glance. Captain Hastings, beside him, shifted uncomfortably, his appetite diminished. "By the evening's grim events, mon ami," Poirot whispered, leaning toward Hastings. "Observe the faces around this table. Each one tells a story, and not all are innocent. Hastings nodded, his gaze sweeping over the guests. It's a rum lot, Poirot. Hard to believe one of them could be a murderer. Precisement, Poirot replied, his mustache twitching. But it is in the ordinary that the extraordinary hides. Let us catalogue our suspects. At the head of the table sat Sir Reginald Hawthorne, his florid face etched with grief. His hands trembled as he lifted a glass of claret, and his eyes red-rimmed darted toward the empty chair where Lady Beatrice would have sat. Poirot noted the man's anguish, but wondered if it masked a deeper motive, perhaps a marriage strained by secrets, or a fortune at stake. Sir Reginald's wealth, built on steel and railways, was vast, but wealth often bred enemies. To his left was Clara Vane, the actress, whose crimson gown clung to her like a second skin. Her kohl-lined eyes sparkled with a calculated charm, but Poirot detected a flicker of unease as she glanced at Dr. Mortimer Crane across the table. Clara's laughter, once the centerpiece of the manor's gaiety, now rang hollow, and her fingers toyed nervously with a pearl necklace. Poirot recalled an earlier moment when Clara had lingered near Lady Beatrice, their whispered exchange tinged with venom. Could jealousy or blackmail have driven her to violence? Dr. Crane, the physician, sat with a rigid posture, his lean face betraying little emotion. His hands, folded neatly before him, were those of a man accustomed to precision, yet Poirot noticed a faint tremor when Sir Reginald mentioned Beatrice's name. Crane's medical expertise made him a figure of interest. A doctor could kill with ease and cover his tracks. Had he harbored a grudge against Lady Beatrice, perhaps tied to a professional slight or a personal betrayal? Count Victor Rostov, the enigmatic diplomat, exuded an air of detached elegance. His tailored suit and gold cigarette case spoke of wealth, but his guarded demeanor suggested secrets. Poirot had overheard Rostov's cryptic remark to Beatrice during the previous evening's festivities. Some debts must be paid in time. The Count's Eastern European accent and vague diplomatic credentials raised questions. Was he a spy, as some whispered, or merely a man with a past too dangerous to reveal? Emily Langston, the young heiress, sat with a quiet intensity, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Her simple yet elegant dress contrasted with Clara's flamboyance, and her questions about the manor's history during the earlier gathering had been pointed, almost accusatory. Poirot sensed a mind as analytical as his own, but her guarded responses when asked about her connection to Beatrice hinted at a hidden agenda. Could an inheritance dispute, as rumored in society circles, have pushed her to desperate measures? The dinner progressed with strained civility, the servants moving like ghosts as they served roasted pheasant and glazed vegetables. Poirot, ever the observer, noted the undercurrents of tension. Clara's attempt at light conversation recounting a recent theatrical triumph fell flat when Emily coolly remarked, "Beatrice always said the stage was a mask for deceit." The comment drew a sharp glance from Clara, and Poirot filed it away as evidence of rivalry. Sir Reginald, struggling to maintain decorum, raised his glass. "To Beatrice," he said, his voice cracking. "May her memory, may justice be done." The toast was met with murmurs, but Poirot noticed Count Rostov's glass remained untouched, his eyes fixed on the tablecloth. Dr. Crane, meanwhile, cleared his throat and offered a platitude about life's fragility, his words sounding rehearsed. Hastings, leaning toward, Poirot whispered, "They're all acting, aren't they? Like players in one of Clara's dramas." "Oui, Hastings," Poirot replied softly. "But the murderer is the one whose performance is most convincing." As the meal concluded, Poirot's attention was drawn to a brief exchange at the table's far end. Emily Langston leaned toward Dr. Crane, her voice low. "You were in the garden last night, weren't you?" she asked, her tone deceptively casual. Crane's fork paused midair, and he replied curtly, "You're mistaken, Miss Langston." Poirot's interest sharpened. Alibis, he knew, were the first threads to unravel in a case. The guests dispersed to the drawing room, But Poirot lingered, his mind cataloguing the evening's observations. The cryptic note found on Beatrice's body. The garden hides the truth code in his thoughts. Each guest, he mused, was a piece in a complex puzzle, their motives interwoven with the Manor's opulent facade. Sir Reginald's grief, Clara's theatrics, Crane's reserve, Rostov's secrecy. Emily's probing, all were threads in a tapestry of deceit. Mon ami, Poirot said to Hastings as they stepped into the hall, we have met our cast of characters, but the script of this crime is yet to be written. Tomorrow, we begin to question, to probe the little gray cells. The truth, it is here, hiding in plain sight. Hastings nodded, his face grim. I don't envy you, Poirot. This lot's as tangled as a ball of yarn. Precisement, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. But Hercule Poirot shall untangle it, thread by thread. Chapter 4. The Gardener's Tale. The morning sun filtered through the mist that clung to Thornfield Manor's gilded garden, casting a soft glow on the golden roses that seemed to mock the tragedy they had witnessed. Hercule Poirot, immaculate, in his tailored suit and polished shoes, stood at the edge of the garden, his hands clasped behind his back. Captain Hastings, ever his faithful companion, adjusted his hat against the early chill, his breath visible in the crisp air. The police had come and gone, cordoning off the crime scene where Lady Beatrice Hawthorne's body had been found. But Poirot had requested a moment to explore the garden further. Sensing its secrets held the key to the murder. Mon ami, Poirot said, his green eyes scanning the meticulously arranged flower beds. This garden, it is not merely a backdrop, it is a stage, and we must find the players who moved upon it last night. Hastings nodded, though his expression was skeptical. You think the gardener knows something, don't you? That chap Greaves seemed awfully jittery when we saw him last night. Precisement, Poirot replied, his mustache twitching. Mr. Thomas Greaves, the keeper of this gilded paradise, has eyes that see much, and a tongue that says little. Let us discover what he conceals. They found Mr. Greaves near the greenhouse, a sturdy man in his late 40s, with weathered hands and a face lined by years under the sun. His cap was pulled low, and his eyes darted nervously as Poirot approached, a spade clutched tightly in his grip. Good morning, Mr. Greaves, Poirot began, his voice smooth as velvet. Hercule Poirot wishes to speak with you about the events of last night. Greaves shifted his weight, his gaze flickering toward the garden. I told the police all I know, sir, he said, his voice gruff. I was in me shed when I heard the scream. Didn't see nothing till I ran out and found her. Poirot tilted his head, his eyes piercing. And yet, monsieur, you were seen near the Gilded Garden earlier in the evening, before the tragedy. A shadowy figure, perhaps. What were you doing there? Greaves' grip on the spade tightened, and a bead of sweat glistened on his brow despite the cool morning. Just tending the roses, sir. They need care, even at night. Lady Beatrice, she was particular about indeed, Poirot said, stepping closer, his tone deceptively mild. And did you see anyone else in the garden? A guest, perhaps, or a stranger? Greaves hesitated, his eyes dropping to the ground. There was someone, couldn't make him out clear. Just a shadow, moving quick like near the fountain. I thought it was one of the guests, maybe, taking a stroll. Hastings raised an eyebrow. A bit late for a stroll, wasn't it? And you didn't think to mention this to the police? I didn't want no trouble, Greaves muttered, his voice barely audible. I keep to myself, do me work, ain't my place to point fingers. Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile, though his eyes remained sharp. Monsieur Greaves, the truth is like a rosette, may have thorns, but it must be plucked. Tell me, what stories does this garden hold? I have heard whispers of a treasure hidden among these golden blooms. Greaves' face paled, and he took a step back, nearly dropping his spade. Treasure, that's just old tales, sir. Folks say the first Lord Hawthorne buried something here during the war, jewels, maybe, or gold. But it's nonsense. I've worked these grounds 20 years, and never found nothing but dirt and roots, Tiens Poirot said, his voice soft but probing. And yet, Lady Beatrice was found among these roses, with a note that speaks of hidden truth. You knew her well, did you not? She designed this garden, after all. Greaves nodded, his expression softening. She loved it. Spent hours here, planning every bloom. She'd talk to the roses, like they was her friends. Said they kept her secrets. Secrets. Poirot's interest sharpened. And what secrets might those be? Greaves clammed up, his jaw tight. I don't know nothing about that, sir. She was kind, that's all. Didn't deserve what happened. Poirot studied the gardener, noting the nervous twitch in his hands, the way his eyes avoided contact. The man was hiding something, fear perhaps, or guilt. But was it the guilt of a murderer, or merely a witness afraid to speak? Poirot decided to press no further for now, letting Greaves' unease simmer as they walked back toward the manor. Hastings spoke up. He's a shifty one, Poirot. That story about a shadowy figure sounds like he's covering for himself. Perhaps, Poirot said, his gaze lingering on the garden. Or perhaps he saw more than he admits. The Gilded Garden, Hastings. It is more than a place of beauty. It is a vault of secrets, and Mr. Greaves is its reluctant keeper. They paused by the fountain where Beatrice's body had been found, the marble gleaming in the sunlight. Pure knelt, examining the ground, though the police had trampled much of the evidence. A single golden petal, caught in a crack, caught his eye. He plucked it delicately, holding it to the light. This garden, he murmured, it speaks, if one knows how to listen. Mon ami, he continued, turning to Hastings, we must learn the language of these roses, for somewhere among them lies the truth of Lady Beatrice's death. Hastings shivered, glancing at the golden blooms. I say, Poirot, this place gives me the creeps. The sooner we solve this, the better. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Patience, Hastings. The truth, like a rose, blooms in its own time. Chapter 5. The Jeweled Dagger's Origin. The morning light streamed through the tall windows of Thornfield Manor's library, illuminating shelves of leather-bound books, and a glass-fronted cabinet that housed Sir Reginald Hawthorne's collection of curiosities. Hercule Poirot stood before the cabinet, his small, meticulous figure reflected in the polished glass. The jeweled dagger, now in police custody, was the focus of his thoughts. Its image vivid in his mind, a golden hilt encrusted with emeralds, its blade stained with the blood of Lady Beatrice Hawthorne. Captain Hastings, pacing nearby, glanced at the cabinet with a mixture of curiosity and unease. Mon ami, Poirot said, his voice precise as he studied the cabinet's contents. The dagger is no ordinary weapon. It is a piece of art, a relic of significance. To understand its role in this crime, we must trace its journey to the Gilded Garden. Hastings stopped pacing, his brow furrowed. You think it's from this collection, don't you, Sir Reginald's? Got quite a hoard, swords, vases, even that odd-looking statuette. But why would someone use a fancy dagger like that too? Well, you know. Precisement, Hastings, Poirot replied, his green eyes gleaming. The choice of weapon is never accidental. It speaks of motive, of opportunity, and perhaps of betrayal. Let us consult the master of this house. Sir Reginald was summoned, his heavy footsteps echoing as he entered the library. His face, still etched with grief, carried a new wariness, as if he sensed Poirot's scrutiny. Monsieur Poirot, he said, his voice hoarse. The police have taken the dagger, but I understand you wish to know its history. Oui, Sir Reginald, Poirot said, gesturing to the cabinet. This dagger, with its golden hilt and emeralds, is no common blade. Is it part of your collection? Sir Reginald nodded, his eyes flickering to the cabinet. It is a gift, actually, from Count Victor Rostov. He presented it to me last year, during a diplomatic visit. Said it was a family heirloom, from some Eastern European estate. I thought it a fine piece for display, nothing more. Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his heightened interest. Count Rostov, you say? Tiens, that is most illuminating. And was the dagger kept under lock and key? Of course, Sir Reginald replied, his tone defensive. This cabinet is always locked. Only I have the key, though, Beatrice, he faltered, his voice breaking. Beatrice had access too. She loved to show the collection to guests. Hastings raised an eyebrow. So, anyone could have known about the dagger, then. If Lady Beatrice was showing it off, perhaps, Poirot said, his gaze fixed on Sir Reginald. But to take it, to use it in such a manner, requires more than opportunity. It requires intent. Tell me, Sir Reginald, was the dagger ever removed from the cabinet before last night? Sir Reginald shook his head. Not to my knowledge. The police found the cabinet locked. No signs of tampering. I don't understand how it was taken. Poirot turned back to the cabinet, his fingers brushing the glass as if to coax secrets from its surface. The police, they are thorough, but they lack the method of Hercule Poirot. I have examined the dagger, and I have found a smudge, a partial fingerprint on the hilt. Not clear enough to identify, but enough to suggest carelessness. The murderer, they were not as precise as they believed. Hastings' eyes widened. A fingerprint. That's a start, isn't it? Can we match it to the guests? In time, mon ami, Poirot said, his tone measured. But first, we must consider the giver of the dagger. Count Rostov's gift is now a murder weapon. This is no coincidence. They sought out Count Rostov, finding him in the drawing room, where he stood by a window, his tall frame silhouetted against the morning light. His gold cigarette case gleamed as he lit a cigarette, his movements deliberate. Monsieur Poirot, he said, his accent smooth, you wish to discuss the dagger, I presume? Oui, Count Rostov, Poirot said, his voice deceptively mild. A most generous gift to Sir Reginald, yet it has found its way into a tragedy. Tell me, what is the history of this dagger? Rostov exhaled a plume of smoke, his eyes narrowing. It was my grandfather's, a relic from our family's estate in Belarus. I gave it to Sir Reginald as a gesture of goodwill during a trade negotiation. I had no idea it would be used for such a purpose. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting, and yet it was taken from a locked cabinet, used to kill Lady Beatrice, and left at the scene. You were seen near the garden last night, monsieur. A stroll, perhaps, or something more. Rostov's smile was thin. A stroll, nothing more. I admire beauty, Monsieur Poirot, whether in gardens or in women, but I am no murderer. Hastings, unable to contain himself, interjected. That's a bit convenient, don't you think? Your dagger, your stroll, and now a dead woman. Come toy, Hastings, Poirot said, raising a hand. Count Rostov, your words are noted. But the little gray cells, they are not yet satisfied. As they left the drawing room, Poirot's mind churned. The dagger's origin, tied to Rostov, suggested a connection deeper than a mere gift. The smudged fingerprint hinted at haste or arrogance, and the locked cabinet raised questions of access. Had Beatrice herself taken the dagger, or had someone else, perhaps with a key or a clever hand, unlocked its secrets? Mon ami Poirot said to Hastings, the dagger is a thread in our tapestry of clues. It points to Rostov, but also to others who knew of its existence. We must examine the alibis, the motives, and the hands that may have held it. Hastings shook his head. This case gets murkier by the minute, Poirot. That dagger's got a story to tell. Precisement, Poirot replied, his eyes gleaming, and Hercule Poirot shall listen. Chapter 6. The Actress's Secret. The library of Thornfield Manor, with its towering bookshelves and the faint scent of aged leather, was a sanctuary of quiet amidst the storm of suspicion that had engulfed the estate. Hercule Poirot stood by a marble bust of Shakespeare, his small, meticulous figure dwarfed by the room's grandeur. Captain Hastings, seated in a plush armchair, flipped through a volume of poetry, though his attention was fixed on Poirot's purposeful movements. The morning's revelations about the jeweled dagger had sharpened Poirot's focus, and now his sights were set on Clara Vane, the actress whose theatrical charm masked a deeper complexity. Mon ami Poirot, said his voice low but resonant, Miss Clara Vane is a performer, not only on the stage, but in life. Her smiles, her tears, they are a mask. We must uncover what lies beneath. Hastings closed the book with a snap. She's a slippery one, Poirot. All that flirting and laughter at dinner, but I saw her glaring at Beatrice the night before the murder. There's bad blood there, I'd wager. Precisement, Poirot replied, his green eyes gleaming. And I have learned of letters, hidden in Miss Vane's room, that may illuminate this bad blood. Come, we shall invite her to the library for a little conversation. Clara Vane arrived promptly, her crimson-soaked dress rustling as she entered, her kohl-lined eyes wary but her smile radiant. She sank into a chair with the grace of a seasoned actress, crossing her legs and tilting her head. Monsieur she said, her voice a melodic purr, to what do I owe this summons? Surely you don't suspect me of anything so dreadful as murder. Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his amusement at her performance. Mademoiselle Vane, Hercule Poirot, suspects everyone until the truth is revealed. But let us speak plainly. You were close to Lady Beatrice, were you not? Yet I have heard whispers of discord, of secrets shared in anger. Clara's smile faltered, and she toyed with a pearl bracelet on her wrist. Beatrice and I were friends, of course. She adored the theater, always inviting me to Thornfield. We had our little spats, what women don't, but nothing serious. Tiens, Poirot said, stepping closer, his tone deceptively mild. And yet, I have found letters, mademoiselle, hidden in the drawer of your dressing table. Letters. That suggests you were not merely friends, but, how shall we say, a confidant with a price. Clara's face paled, though she quickly recovered, her laugh sharp and brittle. Letters. You've been rummaging through my things, Monsieur Poirot. That's hardly gentlemanly. Hastings, unable to contain himself, leaned forward. Come, off it, Miss Vane. We know you were blackmailing Lady Beatrice. What was Eton affair? A scandal. What did you have on her? Poirot raised a hand to silence Hastings, his gaze never leaving Clara. The letters. Mademoiselle, speak of a liaison, a man from Beatrice's past, one whose name could ruin her. You threatened to expose this to Sir Reginald, did you not? For a sum, of course. Clara's composure cracked, her hands clenching in her lap. You don't understand, she said, her voice trembling. Beatrice was reckless. She thought she could keep her secrets buried, but I knew. I saw her with him, years ago, before she married Reginald. I only asked for what was fair. She had wealth. I had none. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And when she refused to pay, or threatened to expose you instead, what then? Did you take the jeweled dagger from the cabinet, mademoiselle, and silence her in the Gilded Garden? Clara leaped to her feet, her eyes flashing. How dare you? I'm no murderer. Yes, I wrote those letters, but I never touched that dagger. I was in my room when she died. Ask anyone. Tears welled in her eyes, and she sank back into the chair, her performance now one of desperation. Poirot studied her, his mind cataloguing every nuance of her reaction. The tears were genuine, he sensed, but so was the fear. Was it fear of discovery, or fear of something or someone else? Mademoiselle, he said softly, your alibi will be verified. But tell me, who was this man in Beatrice's past? His name may lead us to the truth. Clara hesitated, her lips parting as if to speak, then closed tightly. I can't say. It's too dangerous. He's not here, but he has powerful friends. That's all I'll tell you." Hastings snorted. Convenient, that. A mystery. Man, and no name to go with it. "Comtois Hastings," Poirot said, his tone firm. "Miss Vane, you have given us much to consider, but know this, the truth, it cannot be hidden forever. The little gray cells, they will find it." As Clara left the library, her steps unsteady, Hastings turned to Poirot. "She's hiding something, Poirot. Those letters blackmails a strong motive for murder." "Oui, but motive alone is not enough," Poirot replied, his gaze distant. "The dagger, the note, the garden, they are pieces of a puzzle, and Miss Vane is but one. Her fear, it suggests another player in this drama, one who may yet be revealed." They stepped into the hall, where the golden light of the garden filtered through the windows, casting long shadows. The cryptic note from Beatrice's hand, "Garden hides the truth," echoed in Poirot's mind. Clara's letters pointed to a scandal, but was it the motive for murder, or a distraction from a deeper secret? "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice low, "we must tread carefully. The actress plays her part, but the stage is set for a greater revelation." Hastings nodded, his face grim. "I don't like it, Poirot. This case feels like a play with too many acts." "Precisement," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "But Hercule Poirot shall direct the final act." Chapter 7. The Doctor's Alibi. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns of Thornfield Manor, its golden light glinting off the Gilded Garden where Lady Beatrice Hawthorne had met her tragic end. Inside the manor, Hercule Poirot stood in the conservatory, a glass-domed room filled with exotic ferns and the faint hum of bees from the nearby garden. His small, meticulous figure was a study in focus, his hands clasped behind his back as he contemplated the next thread in the tapestry of this murder. Captain Hastings, ever restless, paced near a wicker chair, his face clouded with unease. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice soft but commanding. "The good Dr. Mortimer Crane intrigues me. His calm, his precision, they are the marks of a man who knows more than he reveals. We must test his alibi, for it is in the cracks of such stories that the truth often hides." Hastings stopped pacing, his brow furrowed. "Crane's a cool customer, I'll give you that. Said he was in his room when Beatrice was killed, but I don't buy it. He's too controlled. And that business with Clara Vane at dinner, those sharp looks they exchanged. Something's off." "Precisement," Poirot replied, his green eyes gleaming. "Let us invite the doctor to this charming conservatory and see how his composure holds under the scrutiny of Hercule Poirot." Dr. Mortimer Crane arrived promptly, his lean frame clad in a sober gray suit, his face a mask of professional detachment. His hands, steady as ever, betrayed no tremor, but Poirot noted a slight tightening around his eyes as he sat across from them. "Monsieur Poirot," Crane said, his voice even, "I assume you wish to discuss the events of last night." "I've told the police all I know. I was in my room, reviewing medical notes, when the scream was heard." Poirot tilted his head, his mustache twitching. "Monsieur le Docteur, your alibi is most convenient, yet it lacks corroboration. No one saw you in your room, and the corridor outside was quiet. Tell me, what kept you so occupied that you did not join the other guests in their evening diversions?" Crane's lips pressed into a thin line. "I am not one for idle chatter, Monsieur Poirot. I had correspondence to attend to, professional matters. I heard the scream and came at once, as you saw." Hastings leaned forward, his tone sharp. "And yet, Doctor, you were quick to take charge, keeping Sir Reginald from the body. Awfully composed for a man who'd just stumbled on a murder." Crane's gaze flickered to Hastings, a hint of irritation breaking his calm. "I am a physician, Captain. I am trained to act in crises, not to panic." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his voice deceptively mild. "Oui, But a physician also knows how to end a life with precision. I have made a small discovery, monsieur. In your medical bag, there was a vial of sedative, a strong one, capable of rendering a person unconscious. Might such a substance have been used to ensure Lady Beatrice did not struggle? Crane's face paled, though he recovered swiftly. That sedative is for my patients, monsieur. I carry it for emergencies, insomnia, nervous attacks. It's standard practice. Perhaps, Poirot said, stepping closer, but the vial was half empty, and you have no patients here at Thornfield, save perhaps Sir Reginald in his grief. Did you, monsieur, administer this sedative to Lady Beatrice, or perhaps to another, to ensure silence? Crane's hands clenched briefly, then relaxed. You're reaching, Monsieur Poirot. I had no reason to harm Beatrice. She was my host's wife, nothing more. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. And yet, I have heard whispers of a disagreement, monsieur. A professional slight, perhaps, or a personal matter. Sir Reginald mentioned you once sought to treat Lady Beatrice for an ailment, but she refused your services. Was this a source of resentment? Crane's jaw tightened, and for a moment, his composure wavered. Beatrice was stubborn, yes. She distrusted doctors, thought her headaches were nothing serious. I offered my expertise, but she declined. It was no cause for murder. Hastings snorted. A doctor scorned. That's motive enough for some. Calm toy, Hastings, Poirot said, raising a hand. Dr. Crane, your alibi is fragile, and this vial raises questions. You were seen near the garden earlier in the evening by Miss Langston, despite your claim of solitude. Can you explain this? Crane's eyes widened, a flicker of panic crossing his face. Miss Langston is mistaken. I was in my room. The garden holds no interest for me. Poirot studied him, his mind cataloging every nuance. The doctor's composure was a facade, but was it the mask of a murderer, or merely a man with secrets? The sedative, the inconsistent alibi, the tension with Beatrice, all were threads in the growing web of suspicion. As Crane left the conservatory, his steps brisk, Hastings turned to Poirot. He's hiding something, Poirot. That sedative could have knocked Beatrice out before the dagger struck. And that business about staying in his room, it doesn't add up. Oui, Hastings, Poirot replied, his gaze drifting to the gilded garden beyond the glass. The doctor is a man of science, yet his story lacks precision. The sedative, the dagger, the note, the garden hides the truth. They point to a plan, a design, but the conservatory's warmth seemed to fade. As Poirot's thoughts turned to the garden, its golden roses, a silent witness to the crime. Mon ami, he said, his voice low. We must unravel the alibis of all our suspects. Dr. Crane's secrets are but one piece of the puzzle. Hastings nodded, his face grim. This case is like trying to catch smoke, Poirot. Everyone's got something to hide. Precisement, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. But Hercule Poirot shall capture the truth, no matter how elusive. Chapter 8. The Diplomat's Disguise. The late afternoon light filtered through the heavy velvet curtains of Thornfield Manor's study, casting a warm glow on the polished oak desk where Hercule Poirot sat, his small hands folded neatly before him. The room, lined with maps and leather-bound volumes, exuded an air of quiet authority, a fitting stage for unraveling the secrets of Count Victor Rostov, the enigmatic diplomat whose aloof charm had piqued Poirot's curiosity. Captain Hastings stood by the window, gazing out at the gilded garden, where the golden roses seemed to shimmer with secrets of their own. Mon ami, Poirot said, his voice precise, Count Rostov is a man of shadows. His gift of the jeweled dagger, his solitary stroll in the garden, and now, a discovery that suggests he is not what he seems. We must peel back the layers of his disguise. Hastings turned, his brow furrowed. You've got something on him, haven't you, Poirot? I've never trusted that fellow. Too smooth, too polished. And that accent. Hard to pin down where he's from. Precisement, Poirot replied, his green eyes gleaming. And so, I have made a discreet inquiry. In the Count's room, I found a telegram, coded in a manner most intriguing. Let us invite him to explain himself. Count Rostov entered the study with the grace of a panther. His tailored suit impeccable, his gold cigarette case glinting as he tucked it into his pocket. His dark eyes met Poirot's with a mixture of amusement and caution. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his Eastern European accent smooth as silk, "you have a reputation for uncovering truths. What do you seek from me today?" Poirot leaned forward, his mustache twitching. "Monsieur le Comte, let us speak of your credentials. You are a diplomat, oui? Yet, there are whispers that your position is, how shall we say, less official than it appears. And then, there is this." He produced a folded piece of paper, the telegram, and held it up. "A message, coded, found among your possessions. Care to explain its meaning?" Rostov's smile remained, but his eyes narrowed. "You've been thorough, Monsieur Poirot. That telegram is a private matter, concerning trade negotiations. Nothing more." Hastings, unable to contain himself, interjected, "Private, eh? Private enough to be written in code. And what about that dagger you gave Sir Reginald? It's the murder weapon, in case you've forgotten." "Come, Toy Hastings," Poirot said, raising a hand. "Count Rostov, the dagger you gifted to Sir Reginald was used to kill Lady Beatrice. You were seen near the Gilded Garden before her death. And now, this telegram, its code suggests matters of espionage, not trade. Are you, perhaps, more than a diplomat?" Rostov's composure held, though his fingers twitched briefly toward his cigarette case. "You weave a dramatic tale, Monsieur Poirot. I am a diplomat, nothing more. The dagger was a gift, a family heirloom, as I told Sir Reginald. As for the telegram, it concerned sensitive business matters, encoded for privacy. I was in my room when Lady Beatrice died. Asked the servants." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "The servants, monsieur, recall seeing you leave your room earlier in the evening, shortly before the scream, and the code of your telegram, it is not one used by legitimate diplomats. I have seen such ciphers before, in cases of internet intrigue. Tell me, what is your true purpose at Thornfield?" Rostov's smile faded, replaced by a steely glint. "You tread dangerous ground, Monsieur Poirot. My purpose here was to enjoy Sir Reginald's hospitality, nothing more. I had no quarrel with Lady Beatrice." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild, "but your gift became a weapon, and your movements are suspect. Did you know of Lady Beatrice's secrets? The note found in her hand, the garden hides the truth. Does it speak to you, monsieur?" Rostov's jaw tightened, and for a moment, silence hung heavy in the study. "I know nothing of notes or secrets," he said finally, his voice low. "Lady Beatrice was charming, but we were not close. If you seek a murderer, look elsewhere." Poirot studied him, his mind cataloguing every nuance. The Count's charm was a shield, but the coded telegram and his evasive answers suggested a deeper game. Was he a spy, as Poirot suspected, or merely a man caught in the wrong place? The dagger's connection to him was undeniable, but motive remained elusive. As Rostov left the study, his steps measured, Hastings turned to Poirot. "He's slippery as an eel, Poirot. That telegram's got to mean something. Spies, secret deals, who knows what else?" "Oui, Hastings," Poirot replied, his gaze fixed on the telegram. "The Count plays a role, but whether it is villain or pawn, we shall see. The dagger, the telegram, the garden, they are pieces of a puzzle, and we must fit them together." The study's silence was broken only by the distant chirping of birds in the garden. Poirot's thoughts returned to the cryptic note, its words echoing. The garden hides the truth. Rostov's secrets, like those of the other guests, were buried deep, but Poirot's little gray cells were relentless. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice low. "We are close to a revelation, but the truth is a delicate flower. We must pluck it with care." Hastings nodded, his face grim. "This case is like a maze, Poirot. Every turn leads to another mystery." "Precisement," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "But Hercule Poirot shall find the path." Chapter 9. The Heiress's Confession. The drawing room of Thornfield Manor, with its gilded mirrors and velvet drapes, glowed softly in the evening light. But an undercurrent of tension pulsed beneath its opulence. Hercule Poirot stood by the grand fireplace, its marble carved with intricate roses that echoed the gilded garden outside. His small, meticulous figure was a beacon of calm amidst the storm of suspicion that had enveloped the manor since Lady Beatrice Hawthorne's murder. Captain Hastings, seated on a brocade sofa, fidgeted with a silver cigarette case, his eyes darting toward the door where Emily Langston, the young heiress, was expected to appear. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice low and precise. "Miss Emily Langston is a puzzle. Her wit is sharp, her observations keen, yet she guards her thoughts as carefully as a vault. Tonight, we shall unlock her secrets." Hastings nodded, his brow furrowed. "She's a cool one, Poirot. I saw her watching everyone at dinner, like a hawk. And that comment about Dr. Crane being in the garden, she's not afraid to stir the pot. But do you really think she's involved?" "Precisement," Poirot replied, his green eyes gleaming. "Her boldness suggests either innocence or a very clever disguise. Let us see what her confession reveals." Emily Langston entered the drawing room with a confident stride, her simple navy dress a stark contrast to the flamboyance of Clara Vane or the elegance of the late Lady Beatrice. Her auburn hair was pinned neatly, and her sharp eyes met Poirot's with a mixture of curiosity and defiance. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady, "you've been busy, haven't you? I suppose I'm next on your list of suspects." Poirot inclined his head, his mustache twitching. "Mademoiselle Langston, you are perceptive. Hercule Poirot seeks only the truth, and I believe you have a truth to share. There was there not, a disagreement between you and Lady Beatrice? Something about an inheritance, perhaps?" Emily's lips tightened, but she sat gracefully, folding her hands in her lap. "You're well informed, Monsieur Poirot. Yes, Beatrice and I argued. It was no secret in certain circles. My late aunt, Lady Margaret Langston, left a substantial estate, part of which Beatrice claimed as her own, through some dubious legal maneuvering. I challenged her on it rather heatedly, I admit." Hastings leaned forward, his tone sharp, heatedly enough to take a dagger to her in the garden, "Miss Langston." Emily's eyes flashed, but her voice remained calm. "I'm not a murderer, Captain Hastings. Our argument was weeks ago, in London. I came to Thornfield to clear the air, not to kill her." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "Mademoiselle, your candor is refreshing, but your alibi is less so. You claim you were walking in the garden last night, alone, when the scream was heard. Yet, no one saw you, and the garden, it is where Lady Beatrice met her end. A curious coincidence, n'est-ce pas?" Emily's composure wavered, her fingers tightening in her lap. "I needed air, Monsieur Poirot. The manor was stifling, and I often walk alone to think. I was near the orchard, not the Gilded Garden, when I heard the scream. I ran toward it, like the others." "Yet you did not join the others immediately," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. "Dr. Crane, for instance, was quick to act, yet you arrived later. And you accused him of being in the garden earlier. Why?" Emily hesitated, her eyes darting to the fireplace. I saw someone, a figure, near the roses earlier that evening. It looked like Dr. Crane, but it was dark. I mentioned it too. Test him, to see if he'd slip." Hastings snorted. "Testing him, or covering your own tracks? That's a convenient story, Miss Langston." "Come toi Hastings," Poirot said, raising a hand. "Mademoiselle, you'll walk, Your observation, they are intriguing, but they lack witnesses. And this inheritance dispute, it was no small matter. We, Lady Beatrice's claim, threatened your fortune, your future. Such stakes can drive even the most rational to desperate acts. Emily's face hardened, but her voice remained steady. I won't deny the inheritance mattered. It's my family's legacy, and Beatrice had no right to it. But I didn't kill her. I wanted justice through the courts, not a dagger. Poirot studied her, his mind cataloging every nuance. Her candor was disarming. Yet her uncorroborated alibi and keen observations suggested either a truthful witness or a cunning player. The note found on Beatrice's body, "The garden hides the truth" code in his thoughts. Was Emily's walk a genuine habit, or a cover for a darker purpose? Mademoiselle Poirot said, his voice soft, "You have given us much to consider. But the truth, it is like the roses outside, it blooms only when tended with care. If you saw another in the garden, you must tell us all." Emily's gaze met his, unflinching. "I've told you what I know, Monsieur Poirot. If you want more, look to those who hide behind charm or silence." As she left the drawing room, her steps measured, Hastings turned to Poirot. "She's sharp, Poirot, but that alibi's as flimsy as tissue paper, and throwing suspicion on Crane's clever move, or guilty deflection." "We, Hastings," Poirot replied, his gaze distant. "Miss Langston is a mind to be reckoned with, but her story, it has gaps. The garden, the inheritance, the mysterious figure, they are threads we must weave together." The drawing-room's opulence seemed to close in, the gilded mirrors reflecting Poirot's resolve. "Mon ami," he said, his voice low, "the truth is near, but it is tangled in the motives of our guests. We must proceed with care." Hastings nodded, his face grim. "This case is like chasing a shadow, Poirot. Everyone's got a story, but none of them quite fit." "Precisement," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "But Hercule Poirot shall make them fit." Chapter 10. The gilded Clutha, gilded garden of Thornfield Manor, shimmered under the midday sun, its golden roses catching the light like 1,000 tiny flames. Hercule Poirot, his patent leather shoes carefully navigating the gravel paths, moved with the precision of a man who saw more than mere beauty in the blooms. Captain Hastings followed, his face flushed from the warmth, his eyes scanning the garden with a mix of admiration and unease. The memory of Lady Beatrice Hawthorne's body, found among these very roses, lingered like a shadow, and Poirot's latest discovery had set his little gray cells ablaze with purpose. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice low but vibrant. "This garden, it is not only a place of death, but a vault of secrets. The note in Lady Beatrice's hand, the garden hides the truth. It speaks to us, and we must listen." Hastings mopped his brow with a handkerchief. "I say, Poirot, you're onto something, aren't you? The way you've been poking about the flower beds, like a bloodhound sniffing for clues. Found anything yet?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his quiet triumph. "Oui, Hastings, observe." He knelt beside a cluster of roses near the marble fountain where Beatrice had died, his gloved fingers delicately brushing aside the soil. From the earth, he unearthed a small golden locket, its surface tarnished but intact, its chain tangled in the roots of a rose bush. He held it aloft, the locket catching the sunlight with a gleam that mirrored the garden's golden hues. Hastings leaned closer, his eyes wide. "Good Lord, Poirot, a locket, buried here. How did you know where to look?" "The little gray cells," mon ami Poirot replied, his tone deceptively mild. The soil near the fountain was disturbed, not by the police, but by a hand less careful. It suggested something hidden, something precious. And this locket, it is a clue most significant. Poirot opened the locket with a gentle click, revealing a faded photograph inside, a young man, handsome, with dark hair and a serious expression. A tiny inscription on the locket's inner lid read, "To be, forever yours." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind racing. Tiens, Hastings, this is no trinket. This is a relic of the heart, a secret from Lady Beatrice's past. Hastings whistled softly. A lover, you think? Before Sir Reginald? That could stir up all sorts of trouble. Betrayal. Maybe Clara Vane's blackmail letters were onto something. Precisement, Poirot said, slipping the locket into his pocket. The letter spoke of a man from Beatrice's past, one whose name could ruin her. This locket, buried in the garden, suggests a connection too dangerous to keep in the open. But who is this man, and why was his locket hidden here? They returned to the manor, where Poirot sought out Sir Reginald in the library, hoping to shed light on the locket's significance. Sir Reginald, still pale from grief, sat slumped in an armchair, a glass of brandy untouched before him. "Monsieur Poirot," he said wearily, "have you found something to bring justice for my Beatrice?" Poirot produced the locket, holding it carefully. "Monsieur, do you recognize this? It was found in the Gilded Garden, near where Lady Beatrice was found." Sir Reginald's eyes widened, his hand trembling as he took the locket. "This? I've never seen it before. Beatrice never mentioned it. But that inscription..." His voice broke, and he looked away, his face a mask of pain. "She had suitors before we married, of course. She was beautiful, vibrant, but she swore there was no one else." Poirot's gaze was gentle, but unrelenting. "Monsieur, this locket suggests a secret kept from you. A man, perhaps, who meant more to her than she admitted. Can you recall any name? Any hint of such a connection?" Sir Reginald shook his head, his voice hoarse. "No, she was private about her past. I trusted her, but if this man, if he hurt her..." His hands clenched, and Poirot noted the flicker of anger beneath his grief. As they left the library, Hastings spoke up. "Poor chops in pieces, Poirot, but that locket's a bombshell. If Beatrice had a lover, he could be the killer or someone else who knew about him. Clara Vane might have been blackmailing her over this fellow. We, Hastings," Poirot said, his mind churning. "The locket is a thread that ties to Clara's letters, perhaps to Count Rostov's mysterious dealings, or even to Emily Langston's inheritance dispute. But we must find this man, or his shadow, among our suspects." They paused in the hall, the golden light of the garden filtering through the windows. The note's words, "The garden hides the truth," echoed in Poirot's thoughts. The locket was a tangible clue, but its meaning remained elusive. Was it buried by Beatrice to hide her past, or by her killer to conceal a motive? "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice low, "this locket is a key, but to which lock? We must question further, probe the hearts of those who knew Lady Beatrice best." Hastings nodded, his face grim. "This case is like digging in that garden, Poirot. Every spadeful turns up something new, but it's all tangled roots." "Precisement," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "But Hercule Poirot shall untangle them, and the truth shall bloom." Chapter 11. The midnight revelation. The drawing room of Thornfield Manor glowed with the soft flicker of candlelight, its gilded mirrors reflecting the tense faces of the assembled guests. The clock on the mantelpiece struck midnight, its chimes resonating like a heartbeat in the heavy silence. Hercule Poirot stood at the center of the room, his small, meticulous figure commanding attention despite the grandeur surrounding him. Captain Hastings, seated near the fireplace, watched with bated breath, sensing that Poirot's latest gambit, a reenactment of the murder timeline, was about to unravel the tangled web of secrets surrounding Lady Beatrice Hawthorne's death. "Madame, messieurs," Poirot began, his voice clear and authoritative. "Tonight, we gather to retrace the steps of a tragedy. Lady Beatrice was found in the Gilded Garden, a jeweled dagger in her side, a note in her hand that speaks of hidden truth. But the truth, it is not hidden from Hercule Poirot. Let us examine the moments before her death, and see where your stories falter. The guests Sir Reginald Hawthorne, Clara Vane, Dr. Mortimer Crane, Count Victor Rostov, and Emily Langston sat in a semicircle, their expressions a mix of apprehension and defiance. Sir Reginald's hands trembled, his grief now laced with dread. Clara's kohl-lined eyes darted nervously, her fingers clutching a silk handkerchief. Dr. Crane maintained his stoic demeanor, though his jaw was tight. Rostov's aloof charm seemed strained, his cigarette case untouched. Emily Langston's sharp gaze met Poirot's unflinching but wary. Poirot paced slowly, his eyes sweeping the room. The evening of the murder, each of you claims to have been elsewhere. Sir Reginald, you were in the billiard room. Miss Vane, in your room. Dr. Crane, also in your room, with your medical notes. Count Rostov, taking a stroll. Miss Langston, walking in the orchard. Yet, the scream was heard at precisely 11:47 p.m., and you all appeared in the garden within minutes. Let us test these alibis. Hastings, acting as Poirot's assistant, consulted a notebook. I've timed it, Poirot. From the billiard room to the garden, it's a 2-minute walk. From the bedrooms, about 90 seconds. The orchard's a bit farther, 3 minutes, maybe. Everyone's story checks out, except precisement. Hastings Poirot interrupted, his mustache twitching. Except that the timing is too perfect. Too many of you were alone, unseen, and there is a witness who has not yet spoken fully. He turned to the door, where a young lad, no more than 16, stood nervously, his cap twisted in his hands. Master Peter, the gardener's assistant, come forward. Peter, Mr. Greaves' apprentice, shuffled into the room, his eyes wide with fear. The guests exchanged uneasy glances, and Poirot's gentle tone belied his sharp intent. Peter, you were in the garden shed that night. You told the police you saw nothing, but I believe you saw more. Speak now, and fear not the truth. Peter swallowed hard, his voice trembling. I didn't want to get in trouble, sir, but I was in the shed, fixing tools, when I saw 2 figures in the garden, near the fountain, just before the scream. They was whispering, like they didn't want to be heard. I couldn't see faces, it was dark, but one was tall, like a man, and the other, smaller, maybe a woman. A gasp rippled through the room. Clara Vane's handkerchief fell to the floor, and Dr. Crane's hand twitched. Rostov's eyes narrowed, while Emily Langston leaned forward, her expression unreadable. Sir Reginald's voice broke the silence. 2 people? A conspiracy? Who were they, boy? Peter shook his head. I swear, sir, I couldn't see. I heard the scream right after, and I hid. I was scared. Poirot's gaze swept the guests, his voice cutting through the tension. 2 figures, Mesdames et a meeting in the garden, moments before Lady Beatrice's death. Who among you was there? Speak, or the little grey cells shall speak for you. Accusations erupted. Clara pointed at Dr. Crane. You were in the garden. I know it. I saw you. Leave your room earlier. Crane shot back. And you, Miss Vane, were nowhere near your room when you claimed. Emily's voice cut through, sharp and cold. Enough. You're all hiding something, but I wasn't part of any plot. Rostov remained silent, his eyes fixed on Poirot, while Sir Reginald buried his face in his hands. Silence, Poirot commanded, his voice like a whip. The truth is near, but it is tangled in your lies. Peter's testimony suggests a conspiracy, a plan executed in the shadows of the Gilded Garden. The jeweled dagger, the locket, the note. The garden hides the truth. They point to a motive shared by more than one. Hastings whispered to Poirot. Good Lord, Poirot, to people. This changes everything. A killer and an accomplice. Hastings, Poirot replied softly. The garden has spoken, and we are close to unmasking the guilty. But we must tread carefully, for the truth is a delicate bloom. The guests dispersed, their faces pale, their secrets heavier than ever. Poirot's mind churned. The pieces of the puzzle: Clara's blackmail, Crane's sedative, Rostov's telegram, Emily's dispute, the locket's lover falling into place. The midnight revelation had shifted the game, and the Gilded Gardens. Truth was within reach. Mon ami, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. The stage is set for the final act. We shall unmask the conspirators. Hastings nodded, his voice grim. This case is like a storm, Poirot. It's about to break. Precisement, Poirot said, his resolve unshakable. And Hercule Poirot shall bring the light. Chapter 12. The Gardens, Secret. The Gilded Garden of Thornfield Manor, bathed in the pale light of a waning moon, seemed to pulse with secrets as Hercule Poirot stepped onto its gravel paths. The golden roses, their petals shimmering faintly, stood as silent sentinels around the marble fountain where Lady Beatrice Hawthorne had met her end. Captain Hastings followed closely, his face taut with anticipation, a lantern in hand, casting flickering shadows. The revelation of two figures in the garden, as testified by young Peter, had set Poirot's little gray cells ablaze, and now, guided by the cryptic note, "The garden hides the truth," he sought the final piece of the puzzle. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice low but resolute, "the garden has spoken through its clues: the dagger, the locket, the note. Tonight, it shall reveal its deepest secret, one that ties the past to the present, and the murder to a betrayal long buried." Hastings shivered, gripping the lantern tighter. "I don't like it, Poirot. This place feels haunted." "You're sure? There's something hidden here." Greaves called that treasure talk nonsense. "Precisement," Poirot replied, his green eyes gleaming in the moonlight. "But Mr. Greaves, he protests too much. The soil near the fountain, disturbed yet not by the police, suggests a hiding place. Let us dig, Hastings, and uncover the truth." They knelt by the fountain, where the roses grew thickest, their golden blooms masking a patch of earth that bore faint signs of tampering. Poirot, with the care of an archaeologist, used a small trowel to probe the soil. After a few careful minutes, his trowel struck something solid: a metal box, rusted but intact, buried shallowly among the roots. He lifted it free, its weight heavy with promise, and opened it to reveal a cache of glittering jewels, emeralds, sapphires, and diamonds, their facets catching the lantern's glow. Hastings gasped. "Good Lord, Poirot, a treasure, just like the rumors said. But what's this got to do with Beatrice's murder?" Poirot's mustache twitched as he examined a small insignia on the box, a crest linked to a European royal house. "These jewels, mon ami, are no ordinary fortune. They are stolen from a wartime scandal I recall from my inquiries in London. Sir Reginald, in his youth, was implicated in smuggling valuables during the war, in partnership with a foreign agent. I suspect that agent was none other than Count Victor Rostov's father." Hastings' eyes widened. "Rostov. So that's why he gave Sir Reginald that dagger, a reminder of their family's shared past." "Oui," Poirot said, closing the box. "But Lady Beatrice, she discovered this secret, perhaps through the locket's lover, or Clara Vane's blackmail. Her death was to silence her knowledge, and the garden, it was the perfect hiding place." Their discovery was interrupted by a rustle in the shadows. Poirot's hand shot up, signaling silence, as two figures emerged from the darkness: Count Rostov, his face pale but composed, and Clara Vane, her crimson dress stark against the night. Their eyes widened at the sight of the box in Poirot's hands. "You've been busy, Monsieur Poirot," Rostov said, his voice smooth but edged with menace. "Those jewels belong to my family, stolen by Sir Reginald's treachery. Beatrice knew too much, threatened to expose us." Clara's voice trembled, her eyes darting to Rostov. "I didn't want her dead, I swear. I only wanted money to keep quiet about her affair. Victor, he took it too far." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "Monsieur le Comte, Mademoiselle Vane, You were the two figures in the garden. You conspired to silence Lady Beatrice. Using the dagger, you gifted Sir Reginald to point suspicion elsewhere. But your plan, it was not flawless. The note, the locket, the jewels, they betray you. Rostov's hand moved to his pocket, but Poirot's voice cut like a blade. Do not be foolish, monsieur. The police are near, summoned by my foresight. Your confession is all that remains. Clara sobbed, sinking to her knees. It was Victor's idea. He said we'd retrieve the jewels, that Beatrice would ruin everything. I only lured her to the garden. Rostov's face hardened. She would have destroyed my family's honor. The dagger was poetic justice, a reminder of her husband's sins. Hastings, gripping the lantern, stepped forward. You're a cold-blooded killer, Rostov, and you dragged Clara into it. Poirot raised a hand. Calme-toi, Hastings. The truth is revealed, but justice must be precise. He turned to the conspirators. The jewels, the dagger, the locket, they tie to a betrayal from years past. But it is your actions that sealed Lady Beatrice's fate. As the police emerged from the manor, alerted by Poirot's earlier instructions, Rostov and Clara were taken into custody, their faces etched with defeat. The Gilded Garden, once a place of beauty, now stood as a testament to their downfall. Mon ami Poirot said, his voice soft as they watched the police lead the pair away. The garden's secret is no more. But one final act remains too. Lay all truths bare. Hastings nodded, his face grim. This case has been a devil of a thing, Poirot, but you've done it again. Precisement, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. The truth, it blooms in the light of Hercule Poirot. Chapter 13. The final denouement, the grand hall of Thornfield Manor, with its soaring ceilings and glittering chandeliers, stood as a monument to opulence, yet its splendor was dimmed by the weight of tragedy. The guests, now diminished by the absence of Count Victor Rostov and Clara Vane, gathered in a tense semicircle, their faces etched with anticipation and dread. Hercule Poirot stood at the center, his small, meticulous figure radiating an unshakable authority. Captain Hastings, by his side, clutched a notebook, his eyes scanning the room as Poirot prepared to unveil the truth behind Lady Beatrice Hawthorne's murder. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice clear and commanding. We have come to the final act of this tragedy. Lady Beatrice was found in the Gilded Garden, a jeweled dagger in her side, a note in her hand proclaiming, "The garden hides the truth." Tonight Hercule Poirot shall reveal that truth, weaving together the threads of deceit, jealousy, and revenge. Sir Reginald Hawthorne, his face haggard, leaned forward in his chair. Dr. Mortimer Crane stood rigidly, his hands clasped tightly. Emily Langston's sharp eyes met Poirot's, while Mr. Greaves, the gardener, lingered at the edge, his cap twisted in his hands. The air was thick with expectation as Poirot paced slowly, his green eyes gleaming. "Let us begin with the clues," Poirot said. The dagger, a gift from Count Rostov to Sir Reginald, was no mere ornament, but a symbol of a past betrayal. The locket, buried in the garden, spoke of a lover from Lady Beatrice's youth, a secret that threatened her marriage. The note, "The garden hides the truth," pointed to a hidden treasure, a cache of stolen jewels from a wartime scandal, and young Peter's testimony revealed two figures in the garden, a conspiracy born of greed and vengeance. Hastings whispered, "You've got them all on edge, Poirot." "Lay it out, who's the killer?" Poirot raised a hand for silence. "Patience, mon ami. Let us first consider the motives. Clara Vane, the actress, blackmailed Lady Beatrice over a past affair, seeking money to secure her future. Her letters, found in her room, were desperate but not deadly. Dr. Crane, with his sedative vial and fragile alibi, harbored resentment for Beatrice's dismissal of his medical expertise, but his role was peripheral. Emily Langston, wronged in an inheritance dispute, argued with Beatrice, but sought justice through law, not murder. Mr. Greaves, the gardener, knew of the garden's secrets, but lacked the cunning for such a crime. He turned to Sir Reginald, his gaze gentle but piercing. Monsieur, your grief is genuine, but your past is not without shadow. During the war, you and Count Rostov's father smuggled jewels, hiding them in the Gilded Garden. Beatrice discovered this, perhaps through the locket's lover, a man tied to that scandal. She threatened to expose you both, endangering your honor and Rostov's family legacy. Sir Reginald's face crumpled, his voice hoarse. I never meant for this, Poirot. I loved her. Oui, Poirot said softly, but love does not absolve betrayal. Count Rostov, driven by his family's honor, sought to silence Beatrice. The dagger, his gift to you, was a deliberate choice, a symbol of your shared guilt. Clara Vane, desperate for money, became his accomplice, luring Beatrice to the garden under the pretense of negotiation. Poirot's voice rose, commanding the room. The night of the murder, Rostov and Clara met Beatrice in the Gilded Garden. Clara, believing it was a confrontation, distracted her, while Rostov, with cold precision, used the dagger to end her life. The note the garden hides the truth was Beatrice's final act, a warning written as she sensed danger, pointing to the jewels hidden beneath the roses. Emily Langston's voice cut through, sharp and clear. But the locket, monsieur. Poirot, how does it fit? Poirot's mustache twitched. The locket, mademoiselle, was Beatrice's secret, buried to protect her lover's identity. Clara knew of him, using it for blackmail, but Rostov feared his connection to the jewel's theft. The smudged fingerprint on the dagger was left in haste, and the coded telegram in his room confirmed his intent to reclaim the jewels. Dr. Crane spoke, his voice tight. And my sedative. You suspected me. Oui, Monsieur Poirot said. It was a distraction, perhaps intended to confuse, but your resentment was not the motive. Rostov and Clara acted alone, their conspiracy sealed by greed and fear. Sir Reginald buried his face in his hands, while Greaves muttered, I knew. Them roses held trouble. Emily's eyes softened, and Crane exhaled, his tension easing. Poirot stepped forward, his voice solemn. The truth is revealed, and justice shall follow. Rostov and Clara are in custody, their motives laid bare. The Gilded Garden, once a place of beauty, has yielded its secrets, and Lady Beatrice may rest. As the guests dispersed, their faces heavy with relief and sorrow, Hastings turned to Poirot. You've done it again, Poirot. Untangled the whole mess, dagger, locket, jewels, all of it. Precisement, Poirot said, his eyes distant as he gazed toward the garden. The little gray cells, they see what others miss. But justice, mon ami, it is a bittersweet bloom. They stepped into the hall, the first light of dawn filtering through the windows, casting the Gilded Garden in a soft glow. Thornfield Manor stood silent, its secrets laid bare, as Poirot and Hastings prepared to leave, the case closed, but its echoes lingering.